Good morning, fellow traders. It is November 1st of 2025. What you're looking at here is a weekly chart of the sideways dollar, really. It's been sideways since about 2014. Now, how do I know that? Well, the opposite of the dollar is, of course, the euro. And let's go to the monthly and we can see, going back to 2014, what has the euro done? Well, absolutely nothing other than move sideways, okay? That's it. Just moving sideways between the 1.2 area and parity, basically. So why would this end anytime soon, considering this has been the seemingly goal of both central banks to keep the respective currencies of the two largest economies? Well, no longer maybe that with China. But that's where they want the exchange rates. And you can see that, okay? So, what are we hearing right now? Well, interestingly enough, we're hearing the death of the dollar, right? Um, the dollar is going to crash down to nothing. Don't forget, there you have to look at this, and you have to sort of see it in fundamentals, okay? Yes, the dollar's losing value, but in real terms, not in nominal terms, okay? It's been manipulated for the past, well, 11 years, going on 12 years now, which is quite obvious, right? The proof is in what we just saw, right, in the euro. So don't believe all this stuff. So in the real terms, the dollar has just entered, seemingly on the weekly, a buy. Now it's not very volatile, so it takes a long time for it to move. I think we have seen the double bottom. There it is. There it is on the weekly, folks. Double bottom around the 96, 97 area. Just about when you're hearing the maximum rhetoric, and maximum chatter and job owning about the death of the dollar. Could they be right? Maybe. But I've heard that before, and so have you, right? Just about when it makes its turn and heads back up to this area is when you hear the death of the dollar throw is the loudest, right? So, and that doesn't mean you're going to probably still hear it, because, well, they need you to think that the death of the dollar is likely to happen for you to short any particular rise, which is exactly what retail traders do, whereas the large fund managers are taking the opposite side of the trade, or the high frequency traders are taking the opposite side of the trade, of course, right? It's all about deception. And in that case, I just posted on my Telegram channel the case for being a sort of contrarian in relation to gold. Gold will do essentially, you can see that it had its big move up around the fall of the dollar because gold is priced in US dollars. If we look at gold, okay, well, interestingly enough, this is on the weekly. There's your double top. Okay, yeah, it did move up a little bit when the dollar was sort of flat along the bottom, but there is the double top up here. So everybody's talking about, okay, this correction, and then the next move is up to 4,800, 5,000. Well, okay, if the dollar is going to embark on its move to the upside, gold is not going to do the opposite, okay? It's going to slowly work its way probably down to the 3,000, maybe 2,800 area, okay, I think. All right, now that's because everybody is quite certain that gold is still headed higher, okay, to the 5,000, maybe 7,000 area. It could be right over time, but this is based on a lot of uncertainty and basically the buying, the large commercial entities, buying an awful lot of it over the last little while, which includes the central banks. And you hear all this, right? In your fundamental analysis, you hear all this. And of course, it gets you thinking one way, right? One way is that way, up. But that's not how these guys unwind their positions. And interestingly enough, if you look at the COT report, which is the commitment of traders, you'll see that a lot of the commercial traders have flatlined. In other words, they're not weighted to the upside anymore. Okay? They're flat. So it means that gold could move sideways for the foreseeable future to the downside. Okay? So my take is a little different than most other people's. Yes, we're in a corrective sort of phase, but we're also seeing on the weekly and even monthly that gold has made its parabolic move, as has silver, right? It usually does this just before you get these ridiculous moves to the downside, okay? Silver is up around 52, 53. It doesn't stay there very long, folks, okay? The reason being is because it has a very solid practical use industrially, okay? And people can't afford to buy silver when it's up around 52, 50. People are talking $100 silver. If it catches up to gold, it should be 170. Well, that's true if you look at the historical pegs, but that doesn't mean that's where it's headed to. This is all manipulated, okay? Price was allowed to rise, I believe, because of the debt scenario and because, of course, inflationary pressure through credit expansion, which is exactly what quantitative easing is and money printing is. So I think, with the dollar perhaps getting a little stronger, with maybe the tax rates coming into effect, where people are going to start building things with artificial intelligence, perhaps winning the day in a positive way. Not necessarily with the middle class and the lower class, but with the upper class, probably, where they're going to be getting a lot more profits. And you can see that from recent earnings through the big seven. The technology companies, they're continuing to beat estimates. So that means the AI is somewhat doing its job, but it's replacing workers. That's what's happening. It's replacing the workers. So the profit margins are moving up because you're getting these mass layoffs, okay? And so you're going to see that disconnect. But you can see where the divergence is here with gold. It would have to come back down to the 2,500 area to close that divergence. Does that look parabolic to you on the monthly chart? It does to me, okay? That usually means, you can be part of the fools who buy at the top, or you can listen to reason perhaps and, say, okay, this particular move up doesn't necessarily correlate to anything other than perhaps a mania. And I should be cautious up here. If I'm going to buy, I should be cautious. Okay. I haven't been buying since really the 2,500 area, maybe more. I mean, I just didn't take this particular buy. I bought way back in the 2000 when it was down low and it was more physical than it is, the paper value. Paper value doesn't mean much. It's being allowed to rise like this by the bullion banks and the people that control the price, like Bitcoin. So that's my take, and what to expect in the future. I don't think the indexes are going to fall anytime soon because, of course, of the quantitative easing and the lowering of interest rates and the possibility that the dollar gets a little stronger, in real terms versus nominal terms. So, that means that the euro will move slowly down over time too. That means the pound will move slowly down. It could also mean that Bitcoin corrects downward, and there's a strong argument that Bitcoin may return down to the 70,000 area, perhaps lower. I would be very cautious buying up here. And the way to play that is with the artificial intelligence stocks. Okay, that's how you capitalize. So just be aware that it's not always wise to listen to the pundits. In fact, it never is really. But to do your own independent research. To sort of look around and say, let's look at Bitcoin here. Does that really look like it's going to move higher? It's making an inverse funnel, which is one of my favorite patterns. And on the monthly, this is November, you see, in October, it made a nice bearish pin here, which doesn't mean an awful lot. It could still chop around in this area for a long time to come, but it could also move down over the next month to the 90,000 area, then maybe down towards, these sorts of things, you can kind of look at it in the past, Yes, it's an elevated area, but if the dollar is going to strengthen, that doesn't mean that's going to mean that you really don't want to be holding Bitcoin or gold or anything like that, right? That's essentially what it translates into, especially if profits start to increase, and you see things getting a little more stable, a little less uncertain in the world. Okay, so that's my take, and I'm a little different because we're going in a contrarian way. But anyway, that is the outlook for the day, and we will talk to you soon. Have a wonderful weekend.